Hi guys, Casey Talks EV here, and yes, as you can hear from the introduction, I have had the comfort update of 2020. I've had it over a week, well, nearly 2 weeks now, and I've done quite a lot of motorway driving now, quite a lot of town driving, and I feel now is a very good time to actually talk about it, or talk about most of the critical components in detail. So let's get started. So the most critical update by far is that the bong has now been replaced with a chime, so it's gone from this to this. You also only hear it once when you start the car up, not twice, so you now, for example, you wouldn't hear it now if lane keep assist is disabled, you just hear it now on the ready, so that's absolutely fine really, especially given that the bong is a lot nicer to hear, well at least in my opinion it's nicer to hear. You don't get it for the unconditional speed limit warning, so for my example I used to hear it every single time I went past the university, which was absolutely great given I went past it every day. Or if you go into a 20 mph zone, for example right next to my house every single time. I'm now going to go over some B-roll footage of MG Pilot. So as you can tell, when you now flick the indicator on, it now knows that you're trying to indicate and move lane, so it won't quit. It won't come up with the error that says it's quit. Yeah, I don't understand why originally that was in place, but now at least it's gone. And even when you do get the bong, for example, when you take your hands off the wheel, I'll probably show some B-roll footage here as well. It's a lot nicer anyway. You still get obviously the warning beep to put your hands on the wheel when you get a red warning, but apart from that, it makes MG Pilot at least a lot more nice to use, especially when you're not listening to music and you can't just drown out the bongs. But yeah, it works absolutely brilliantly. So now on the infotainment screen, you now get an ambient temperature displayed on the infotainment screen. I'm not quite sure exactly what sensor it's using, however, it seems to be extremely accurate. Ambient temperature actually is. For example, my old Hyundai used to be really affected when it came to leaving the car for a couple hours in the sun. This one seems to be a lot less affected. It is actually displaying what the outside temperature is, which is a lot more useful. So at least it's a very well placed sensor. It also puts to rest that there wasn't one to begin with in the vehicle. I am going to mention, however, if you do have this update, it does change a bit more about the infotainment. It removes all of your sort of presets for your DAB radio and things, so you do have to put them back once you've had your update. And also it does, this is just nitpicking really, but I always have my tyre pressures on PSI. You do have to switch that back from bar to PSI, or at least I had to. So yeah, just to keep in mind that you will have to flick through all your presets again and select them all. So another update is now you can always see your range in the IPK, or the screen in between the dials. They have removed the range to empty screen if you flick through the menus. However, if you still want to access that, well, I don't really know why you would. It does, I guess it displays it a bit bigger. You can still use the battery toggle and it will still come up. It also still obviously functions depending on whether you're on eco, normal or sport mode, so at least you know you can access that. So one of, in my opinion, the most important updates by far for the ZS EV is the fact that they've allowed you to turn off auto high beam in the settings. Auto high beam, in my opinion, was completely useless anyway, because what would happen is it just never reacted fast enough for oncoming drivers. So you would just, effectively, you would have already blinded them by then, and in your state of panic, when trying to turn off the high beam, you would have probably flashed them in the process, which makes, you know, it basically makes it infinitely worse. And basically you would then try and go back into normal, or you know, your normal manual dipped beams, and then control high beam just manually. You'd get home, you'd forget that you've turned it on, and then it would bong at you at 1 in the morning. So at least MG have allowed you to now turn it off in the settings menu or through the infotainment screen, and on top of that it does actually memorize your setting, which is absolutely brilliant. So in terms of the you've left your key in the car warning, or please take your key warnings, it now doesn't actually beep the horn when you leave your key in the car. Now, to be honest, there are two sides of the argument here. Beforehand, at least when it reminded you, because at the end of the day you have keyless go, and in my case I don't put my car keys on the same key ring as my sort of house keys and other keys. What it is a godsend though, because what I would do is sometimes I'd park a little bit too close to the sort of low wall on my driveway, and by the time I've opened the door and I will check for things in the cabin that I need to pick up before leaving the car, and it'll come back on the latch again. All that would happen is it will trigger the you've left your key in the car part of the vehicle and just beep, and that could be at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and that is, I think my neighbours have started to hate me at this point. I can understand though if people start leaving their keys in the car and they want it back, but for me at least it's brilliant. First and foremost, I just want to thank Patrick for sending out the service bulletin on the Facebook group, or at least uploading it onto the Facebook group. It's given me a lot of, first of all, it's given me most of the updates that I do want to go over, and just to double check that I've actually gone over most of the critical components of it. However, I think there might have been a couple things in terms of anecdotally that I have noticed after having the update. So firstly, at least Android Auto seemed to have actually changed the menu selection button. I'm sure it was on the left-hand side before, and now it's on the right-hand side. I'm not quite sure whether that's just, as a coincidence, my Android Auto's updated, and that's why it's coming up now on the right-hand side, but I'm sure that it might have just been a coincidence that I was updating Android Auto to the latest version while having the car updated as well. At the end of the day, you know, being on the right-hand side is a bit closer to the driver. Also, I feel as though the Android Auto and the built-in navigation to the infotainment system seems to be a lot more responsive. I'll show you some footage here, but it just seems to be a lot more, you know, you can scroll through menus a lot easier. Maps-wise, it's a lot more fluid as well. I'm not quite sure whether the update has actually done anything about that, but it definitely seems a bit more responsive than before. Also on the navigation, I'm not quite sure whether that was, I don't use navigation, I always use Android Auto, but it seems that you can add EV charging stations. I don't remember whether you could do that before. Just comment if you were able to do that before, but that's quite a nice feature. I didn't realise that. But yeah, as I said, I've never used I've used it once and then realised how awful it was and then just switched back to Android Auto. But yeah, those are the two sorts of anecdotal updates, at least, I've noticed. So to kind of sum up the video at least, I think these updates have, first of all these little tiny updates have really made the car a lot more nice to live with, a lot more nice to actually go on to the motorway and use MG Pilot. It's made the car a lot more relaxed in terms to drive. You know, I'm not getting bongs every, 5 seconds or whatever, which were completely unnecessary to begin with. At the end of the day, you should be paying attention whilst using MG Pilot still, so I don't understand why, especially when you are indicating to change lanes. But anyway, so in my opinion, yes, if you can get the update for free, just go on and do it. I just want to thank Maple Garage for doing it free of cost. I also thought I'd mention that I haven't actually got a service plan with them at the moment, but for the most part, I'm definitely going to be servicing my vehicle with them anyway. They're the closest dealer to me, at least. So I really have no qualms about taking it back to them for any future updates. As I said, there's rumours in the pipeline that there might be an update to the charging and possibly the range. If there are updates, I'm definitely just going to be taking it to them straight away. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, like it, dislike it if you didn't, and thank you for watching.